Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, Integrating Business Continuity and Crisis Communications, featuring Ironshore Insurance. My name is Megan Carter. I'll be your moderator for today's session. We're going to give everyone a few more minutes to get connected and we'll get started. As a reminder, today's webinar is scheduled for 45 to 60 minutes. The presentation portion will be around 45 minutes and we'll follow that up with a Q&A session. I'll be back in a few more minutes so we can begin as scheduled. Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Megan Carter. I'm the Customer and Growth Marketing Program Manager here at Everbridge. I'm going to give everyone a few more minutes to join, and in the meantime, for those of you who are on the line, I'd like to start things off a little different than our typical webinar, and we're going to do a couple of polling questions. And I am actually going to launch the polling questions, and you'll see a pop-up on your screen. And the question is, do you currently have an emergency notification system? And it seems like, for the most part, many of you do. A couple of you are saying that you don't see the value, and hopefully after this webinar we will be able to convince you of the value. And a couple of you are planning on implementing one, which is great. About 3% of you are, and some of you don't have an emergency notification system at all. And hopefully, again, after this webinar, we'll, you'll see the value and hopefully consider implementing one. I'm going to give it a few more seconds. It looks like 72% of you have already voted. Many of you guys are probably just joining us now, but just answer the question if you can. Excellent. We have almost 80%. I'm going to close the poll now and share the results. So yeah, it looks like most of you guys do have a notification system, which is great to hear, and you'll be learning more about Everbridge on the call if you don't already have one. The next polling question we're going to ask is, you'll see it on the screen shortly, do you currently have a business continuity management tool? And if you could just answer the question, and it looks like 47% of you have already voted, which is great. It looks like many of you do have a business continuity management tool, which is wonderful. Only 3% of you so far don't see the value in one, and our goal on this webinar is to make you see the value in it. So it's wonderful that you've joined us today. I'll give it a few more seconds. It looks like we almost had about 80% of people voted. That's great. Yeah, okay, yeah, so I'm going to close it out and share the results. Yeah, it looks like a little less have a business continuity management tool than an emergency notification tool, but for the most part, the majority of you guys do, which is wonderful. And that's very insightful data, and like I said, I mentioned throughout the webinar, we'll be speaking to the value of both an emergency notification system as well as a BCM tool, and eventually we'll cover the value of integrating the two together. So with that, let's get started. I'd like to thank you guys for joining us today on behalf of the entire Everbridge organization as well as Strategic BCP. I'm excited to present this webinar, Integrating Business Continuity and Crisis Communications, featuring our joint customer, Ironshore Insurance. In the webinar, I'll do a quick intro and some housekeeping. We'll cover the integration between Everbridge and Strategic BCP. Our customer presenter will highlight Ironshore Insurance's BCDRRM program success story. And after the presentation, we'll have about a 15-minute Q&A session as well as a wrap-up. And in terms of housekeeping, you can submit questions at any time during the webinar. You can send your questions by typing in the open text field. It's in the questions panel on your GoToWebinar interface. You just need to send it to all panelists. And if time runs out before your question is asked, we will certainly follow up with you via email after the webinar. Resources from today's presentation will be available within a few days of the session. We'll send you an email as soon as they're available. If you don't already, please feel free to follow us on Twitter at Everbridge and at Strategic BCP. And one final note, in addition, there's a feedback survey that will pop up when you exit the webinar. We take your answers very seriously, and we would really appreciate it if you could fill it out. It'll probably take you about 3 minutes. And now I would like to introduce you to our speakers. We'll start with Patrick Cowan. He's the Manager of Global Business Continuity at Ironshore Insurance. Pat has 29+ years experience in Homeland Security, business continuity, and disaster recovery. Nelson Daza is a Director of Product Management here at Everbridge. He has 25+ years experience in application design and critical communications. And finally, our first presenter of the day is Terry Lee. He's the VP of Product Strategy at Strategic BCP. He has 25+ years of experience in vendor operational risk management and BCP. And now with the formalities out of the way, I'd like to turn it over to Terry. Terry, you can take it away.
Thanks, Megan. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk today about a joint customer that has integrated the Strategic BCP business continuity planning software called ResilienceOne with the Everbridge notification platform for their crisis communication. This is an integration that allows the business continuity professional to compose messages, select people, and then submit that information to their crisis communication solution for broadcast and manipulation. It helps them from a planning perspective in that they can build their call lists for business continuity planning purposes using the same set of people who would be used in crisis communication. And it also gives them the ability to declare a disaster in their particular business continuity planning tool and then track the disaster recovery throughout the process, knowing that they've issued and executed communication in their crisis communication solution. Megan?
All right, great. Thank you so much, Terry. And with that, at this point, we're going to move into our third and final polling question. And that is, have you integrated your emergency notification system with your business continuity management tool for crisis communications? I'm going to launch the poll question on your screens. If you guys could just take some time to answer that. And again, we'll be, Pat will be speaking a little bit more to why they saw value in the integration of the two tools. And hopefully after the webinar, you do see the value. And it does look from the answers that we are getting back, a lot of you have not integrated the two tools yet. And, hopefully after the webinar, you will see some value in it. I'm going to leave the poll open for a few more seconds. Looks like we're at about 70% of people have voted. And it seems like a few of you are planning on integrating the two soon. All right, I'm going to close this out and share the results. Yeah, so there is potential. A lot of you have not actually done the integration yet either. So that's good to hear, and that's something that after the presentation we hope that you guys seriously consider, because there is humongous value in that. With that, Pat, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world today. I'm Pat Cowan, and I am the Business Continuity Manager for Ironshore Insurance. And some of you may know that Liberty Mutual has just recently, as of end of May, purchased Ironshore in its entirety. And Liberty Mutual saw a need within Ironshore for a specialty program that's global. And so Ironshore is one of the fastest growing providers of broker source specialty property and casualty insurance. We insure over $2 billion currently the past year, and we operate in 27 locations globally. And as you imagine, in global operations, we run into all sorts of risks and impacts to our organization. Now, why are we calling this a success story? Well, it wasn't without a little bit of pain, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But why do we need an integrated and dynamic tool for business continuity, disaster recovery, and crisis management? I know your wheels are turning in your head. I don't know jokes about being old, folks. I've been doing this a long time, all the way back to monolithic planning and everything being on paper. Everything was manual in nature. Your planning was manual in nature. It was resource intensive. It's a thing of the past, or it needs to be a thing of the past. But a lot of companies that I've been working with over the past years, recently, even the last decade, are still stuck in a manual process mode. And it's time intensive to plan, and it's resource intensive in having to get people to do business impact analysis, risk assessment, impact assessments, and working across not only the business, but also IT and vendors. The next process would be a dynamic planning tool. Well, that's great. Dynamic means, hey, it's always going to be on. It's always going to be accurate. It's never static like the manual process. Manual is you write it down. It's not dynamic. It's already stale. Dynamic, at least you can have multiple people, multiple business units, organizational structures, internal or external. They can be actively working within the planning tool for business continuity. Phenomenal, terrific. It's a better approach, but multiple groups still have to be involved, and multiple processes are involved, and processes, tools, policies to be able to make this work. So then it came to, hey, we need an integrated process planning tool. It combines all of the benefits of the dynamic processes and planning into one tool. It reduces your training time, and it's more apt to be used. It's accurate to the moment as long as people are inputting the data, but it allows your business continuity planning experts out there, your DR experts, your crisis management experts, to work together within one process, one tool. Why do we need a strategic BCP and Everbridge integration? Wow. You know, I'd let Terry Lee talk on this one, or Megan or Nelson, because those were the guys that were in the background that were developing the need for the dependency. Well, I'm sure a lot of you out there have seen that there are a lot of communications tools out there, and there's a number of market offerings out there for business continuity planning. But why do we need it integrated? Well, again, I said before, it's a single point of planning and activation. One tool, one standard of excellence, you get more bang for the buck. And in today's world, resources, money, and people are in short supply, as all of you practitioners know. So really, we have to work smarter. That's the whole reason you need the integration. Your consistency of contacts. If you have multiple tools, then you have multiple points of disconnect. If you have one tool, guess what? Everything is the same. It doesn't matter who's using the tool. The tool allows everybody to be communicated when they need to be communicated with and how they need to be communicated with. It eliminates pain points. Hey, it's easy to remember. You don't have a complicated tool in either of the tools, Everbridge or Strategic BCP. The way we over at Ironshore have used the tool is Everbridge is the back end. R1 through Strategic BCP is the front end. All of our call lists, all of our planning, everything is from R1. All of our tools from business continuity, disaster recovery, crisis management are all in R1. It drives the Everbridge communications on the back end. Can you use Everbridge as a standalone? Absolutely. Do you need to? No. But is it useful for your higher level planners? Absolutely. Your crisis managers, your HR people, your risk and impact people, if you're so designed, they can use it as a standalone or use it within R1 is the way we've designed it over here at Ironshore. Lack of resources, people. Again, I'm going to reiterate this. One of our biggest pain points out there is that we don't have the money. We don't have the people resources. So an integrated tool gives us an economy of scale where we can have one centralized control element and we can use less people to maintain it, less training time, less chance for people to forget. The tool, it communicates to all elements of BC, business continuity, disaster recovery, that's the technology element, and crisis management. Oh, and guess what? It also integrates with any of your vendors. It also integrates through that map you see on the far right of your screen image. It integrates with all of the users of Everbridge out there. So recently, I'm sure all of you remember of the 2 incidents in London. Well, guess what? Those people in the London area that heard about it were affected by it and were responsive. They reported it in their Everbridge tool, and every user of Everbridge was able to see the impact. So we could do some pre-activation, pre-crisis counseling to our people. We knew what was affecting our people before it really affected our operations in London. And I'm sure all of you remember the reason for a business continuity and disaster recovery plan is to drive crisis management and communication. Communication is all about alleviating fear, having clear, concise information to all the people out there so that they know what's going on, when it's going on, and they're not fearful because they don't know something that's happening. Meg, if you do the next slide, it shows you a blow-up of just what Everbridge showed us when the event happened on London Bridge. And that didn't come from the police in London. That didn't come from anybody else. That came from users. But the London Police Department happens to be using Everbridge, so that's a value added to us right there and then. Now, I'm sure of you are wondering, yeah, it's all sounding pretty good, Pat, but how was it to integrate BC, DR, risk management, and crisis communications with this partnership of Everbridge and Strategic BCP? Well, was it painless? No, it wasn't totally painless because they're two entirely different companies. So I had to learn how to communicate with both of them on a different scale. I've been working with Resilience One for a long time, which is Strategic BCP. I've dealt with Everbridge for a long time, but never both of them together. But what did it allow me to do? Well, it allowed me to identify gaps in our data gathering that supported communications. Well, guess what? I found out HR thought their data was perfect. Well, during the integration, we found out that Resilience One through Everbridge, through Strategic BCP utilizes data one way, and Everbridge uses data in a different way, but we still didn't have complete data. So now HR has to go back and redesign how they collect and report data to allow us to be more effective in our communications. Our CMDB, for you guys that know what that is, that's our configuration management database. That's IT. Guess what? We identified gaps in our IT planning because we have the CMDB being integrated with Resilience One, and now we can say, hey, who handles infrastructure? Who handles our distributed systems, our database, our security? We can develop call lists within R1 that feed Everbridge specifically that address CMDB issues, which makes our help desk more efficient. Again, economy of scale. Next pain point, and next thing we learned, was that there was a lack of understanding within our leadership group of the need for a combined tool. They thought, hey, we got a couple tools out there. They work pretty well. Well, guess what, folks? They didn't have an understanding of planning necessary to activate at times of disaster, or pre-planning for hurricanes or for terrorist activities or those things, and that the training involved in multiple tools allows for a disconnect in the information and making sure that the information that was contained in those tools was the same and accurate. If you have an integrated tool, it's standard, and that they are finally getting to understand that. But then that's a BC training gap, just like the identification of the gap in HR and IT. That's a BC event that we can plan and backfill that gap with mitigation strategies. Even with integrated planning and execution, it still requires effort. Nothing changes. However, if you've got multiple tools and multiple data feeds and multiple groups out there, you have to increase your staff. That increases manual processing and components of it. It also allows for, guess what, disconnects in your planning elements. So what this has allowed Ironshore to do is to unify our communications and integrate the planning effort within one tool. And with Strategic BCP's offering, Resilience One, it's got a built-in project management tool. So I, as the manager of global operations, can just set up automated renewals that sends out emails to all of my business units that says, hey, look this year at your BIA. Anything changed? No. Good. Then it reports. Hey, look at your call lists. Are they all up to date? Yeah, great. So they can just be automated. I don't have to go out and manually do emails and remind them. What would we at Ironshore do if we did not have the capability offered by Strategic BCP and Everbridge? Wow. Again, we'd have to increase our staff. It would decrease my effectiveness because I didn't have to do all of these things manually. All decisions would have to be made essentially at the time of the event instead of having 95% of decisions made and signed off on by executive management, the board of directors, and our steering committee up front when we developed our plan. When we develop our plan in R1, it goes out and management signs off on it. It also helps with audit. an audit, I can allow them to do a read only, and they quit bothering my people for reporting on, did we meet our business impact analysis our recovery time objectives, our RPO objectives, and all of those things. They can go in and audit themselves and leave me alone. It also cuts down on their expenditures of travel because they can do this remotely. It allows me to be proactive during hurricane season, terrorist activity, infrastructure impacts across the globe, any changes in legislation across the globe, because local groups have to change R1, Resilience 1, to meet any changes in local reporting based on the environment that we're in, whether it's insurance or financial institutions. It doesn't matter what group is out there, you can benefit from a combined tool, and it can be acted on prior to impacts. Folks, appreciate the fact that you allowed me to speak today, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to people over there at Everbridge or to the people over at Strategic BCP, and I'm also available for any direct communications if you have any questions. Thank you, Megan. It's all yours.
Thanks, Pat. That was great. That was very, very insightful. And now I'm going to kick it back over to Terry, who's going to tell you guys a little bit more about Strategic BCP.
Thanks, Megan. For those of you that are not familiar with us, Strategic BCP is a leader in business continuity planning and disaster recovery planning. We're ranked as a leader by Gartner and have been for many years. The solution is designed for the BCP professional, but also for the infrequent user, focusing on things like ease of use and navigation to specific points in the product. We decided to work with Everbridge for a couple of key reasons. First, we saw a need in the market to integrate the two products and provide a better method for the business continuity and disaster recovery professionals to do their call list and crisis communication planning. Selecting Everbridge was pretty easy for us. They're a leader in the market. They have great reach. They have great customer stories. And we discovered that a very large number of our customers were actually already or preparing to become Everbridge customers. So there's a lot of overlap within the two customer bases. From a communication standpoint, Everbridge has one of the best international solutions of anybody in the crisis communication space, and we service a lot of global and international customers as well. In addition, our company provides consulting services. We actually conduct BIAs and planning with our customers, and we also lead some of their tests and exercises out of our consulting services team. The product goes beyond traditional BCP and DR. It has capabilities around IT risk management, vendor risk management, and operational risk management, as we believe these are overlapping domains that are necessary for today's business continuity professional as they are really in the risk management market. Megan?
Excellent. Thank you. That was very insightful. And now, last but certainly not least, I'm going to hand it over to Nelson, and he'll talk a little bit more about Everbridge.
Thank you, Megan, and thanks, Terry and Pat. Very, very nice presentations. For the past 15 years, Everbridge has partnered with organizations large and small to help keep people safe and their businesses running. This is our core mission. Whether that is for man-made emergencies, regional natural disasters, or daily operations issues like IT outages or product recalls, Everbridge provides enterprise-ready solutions to minimize the business impact of these critical events. Next slide, Megan. We support over 3,200 corporations and communities as a trusted partner to help protect lives, assets, and business operations. One of the benefits of Everbridge is that we work across multiple verticals. The advantage this provides is that we can take the best practices and requirements across public safety, healthcare, and business organizations and build them into our applications workflows. And since we deliver all of our software as a service or over the web, every customer gets to take advantage of the best practices from within their own industry and across others. Another area of leadership that we pride ourselves on is the market recognition we received, whether it is as the 2-time winner of the Gartner Magic Quadrant and being the first company in our space to go public. Next slide, Megan. And lastly, every day organizations face many different kinds of critical events, each with different stakeholders, all of who are looking for an update to be told what to do, or to be looking for an update as to where the progress is of the resolution of a specific event or incident. The ability to understand the potential impact of these events and effectively mitigate them takes a well-coordinated team sharing information and a shared playbook or operations book. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you very much, Nelson. Okay, everyone, so we're a little ahead of schedule, which is totally fine, but at this point, we're going to move on to our question and answer portion of the session. We have a few questions that were submitted prior to the webinar, but we'll also take questions that, from our audience. As a reminder, you can submit your questions by typing a question into the open text field in the questions panel that's on your screen, and submit it to all panelists, and we will answer as many questions as time allows. So our first question goes to Pat. Pat, you mentioned a couple of the gaps that you identified, but could you go into a little bit more detail about critical gaps that you identified that made the integration between Strategic BCP and Everbridge essential?
I sure can. One of the gaps is in HR. HR essentially is the system of record. It doesn't matter what HR system anybody is using out there. HR does their best to capture certain fields or information. Most of those are simple. It's your work phone number, your work email, things of that nature. Well, if I have an IT outage, and this is part of our planning, that identifies that, wow, we're planning on having a data center outage, we're having a network outage, whatever happens, guess what goes down? My email goes down or my phones go down. So we need an alternate means of communication that HR was not necessarily capturing. Alternate phone numbers, alternate email addresses. All of those things are necessary so that when we try and send out a communication, say for an impending storm or an office closure, and people don't have their computer with them, or they don't have a smartphone where they're getting the notification, it'll at least go out as a text message or a voice message that they can respond to. So HR has to now start working on backfilling information for critical contact information like your alternate email and alternate phone numbers. And that's going to be an ongoing process for the next year plus until we flesh it out. With IT, very simple, is we did not have it broken out into platforms within the CMDB and call lists, and now we're starting to do that, like I said in my presentation, as far as, you've got your database issues, you've got your application issue, you've got a network issue, whatever it may be, so that immediately our help desk can pull up the R1 instance or an Everbridge instance and say, oh, we got this issue here. And they then can look at the call list and put out an immediate notification, say, get on this call bridge that comes with Everbridge, and you don't have to have a separate bridge number, and it'll go out. People can call into the bridge for a management control bridge or a technical control bridge and work through the issues quickly and effectively and not worry for manual processes or people to say, Mother, may I communicate with them? I hope I answered your question.
Yes, that was very good. Here's another question for you, Pat. Can you just go into a little bit more detail on what tools you were using before the integration?
It's called Microsoft Word, for all of an email for all of our business continuity and disaster recovery and crisis management plans. And our plans, as you know, when you do it manually, are open for a lot of gaps, and you have to find embedded names of people instead of roles, because roles do not change. People change that do the roles, and a dynamic integrated tool allows us to change a name and tie it to a role, so it's less time intensive and less prone to mistakes. And for our communications tool, I can tell you we used to use AlertFind, and then that got bought out by another organization, etc. But it was not as resilient as we needed it to be, and it was not as easy to use as the Everbridge product, and there was no plan in place to do any integration with Resilience One that we knew of at the time. And when I heard that we were going to be doing the integration, I jumped on the bandwagon and convinced management in a written proposal that we do this. And they bought off on it and said, good idea, let's do it.
Great, great. We're happy you did. Here is a question from probably maybe for Terry. Terry, this is talking a little bit about the information flow. The question is, does R1 receive information from Everbridge, or does the information flow the other way? What information flows to R1?
It's an excellent question. It's actually a bidirectional communication. So the information that's flowing between the two products primarily is contact identifiers of who needs to be contacted and then the associated message. So we're not passing PII data back and forth. We're not passing cell phone numbers, for example, over to Everbridge, which is why both tools synchronize with their with the HR system. We pass the contact information over, and then from the other direction, we poll Everbridge to understand what the communication channels are that we can use for the end user to select for their communication. So Everbridge tells us that for this group of users, they have available channels of email address, cell phone number, home phone number for possible communications methods. We also get status information of the communications.
Great, and kind of along the same lines, Nelson, this is actually maybe a question that you might be able to answer. Is there an app that the end users are receiving the notifications on, or you know, a panic button is another question. Is there a panic button, or can you communicate through R1 in Everbridge if there's an active shooter situation?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. There are a number of modalities that could be used to communicate with your contacts. For the last 15 years at Everbridge, we've been stressing the need and the importance for organizations to use multiple modalities to contact their recipients. Don't rely on any one path, because, like I said, I've been in this business for a very long time, and I've been doing application development for more than 25 years, and there's no one single path that is absolutely guaranteed to always be available all the time. We've all been on phone calls when the phone call was dropped. We've all claimed we've never received the text message or the email. So we at Everbridge have always been cognizant of that reality, and we offer many delivery methods or contact paths, such as email, SMS, phone, even TTY for the hearing impaired. We also have a mobile application for recipients where you can target your specific notification as well. That's a secure mobile application for your recipients to receive messages from you and also to respond to those messages. Within that application, we have safety features as well that you can activate and have your users use, such as an SOS button in the event that they find themselves, you know, in a hot spot, or they are they're in a very dangerous area or they're concerned for their safety, we have also certain features where that could be enabled by the organization where they can track and ensure people are checking in on a regular basis. So just to round out the answer, again, while we do have a very robust recipient application, we absolutely encourage our clients to always consider every possible way of communicating with your contacts in the event of any situation.
Great, and that's great. The multimodality is very, very important, and kind of flows into our next question for Pat. Pat, how often do you use the integration between Strategic BCP and Everbridge? And for generally, to what audience are you communicating with through the R1 updates?
That's an interesting question, and it has multiple answers to it. I'm using the integrated product between Everbridge Strategic BCP, R1, daily, because any changes I make to any of my users or my call list members within R1 are then having to be reflected in Everbridge. Then when I do tests, when I do notifications through R1 to communicate to groups, instead of going to email and having to remember who I'm communicating with, I can just do it through call lists if necessary and say, hey, you guys need to do this. Also, it works through R1 if I want to set it up as a reminder in the project management tool. So really, when we are mature, which is a 2-year project, and our company is not small, it's not large, and remember, we just got bought by Liberty Mutual, and they're coming over with their specialty products into our group, so I expect this rollout to be an ongoing process. It is going to be a daily utilization of the tool, depending upon the users, how they decide to use it. We are trying to embed business continuity, disaster recovery, crisis management into the mindset of our entire organization so that they understand how critical decisions have a domino effect through the organization based on dependencies. And this joint venture between Everbridge and Strategic BCP gives me, the planner, and the organization and our vendors that work with us an advantage in that case. Because if a vendor has got an impact, they're going to be having access into the R1 planning tool and be able to send notifications out as necessary. Hope that answered the question.
Yeah, a little bit more about the way you're using it, the integration, Pat. Are you using the integration between R1 and Everbridge to fill any missing shifts or to get people to sign up for shifts? Are you using it at all for scheduling purposes?
Yes, everything. I'm using it from we need critical gaps filled to we need a plan updated to we have an impact in our network or we have an impact in our vendor as far as our help desk or our data center or, hey, the city in which I operate, whether it be London, Singapore, India, wherever, has got global or has got unrest going on. You've got a transit strike. I use it for those purposes daily. And I take a look at current impacts as one of the first things I do every morning. I look at the maps of my operational area that are part of Everbridge, and I say, okay, not much is going on right now. Good. Go to the next hotspot. And I take a look at what's going on. Like right now, I know what's going on in London with that high-rise fire. Okay, did it affect me? No. Did it affect my people? Some of them. But I know which people are affected because they're part of my planning element. Does that answer that question, Megan?
Yes, I think it does. Talk to us, Pat. Pat, talk to us a little bit about how training and implementation went for you. So implementing the integration as well as training anyone, who you trained, how long it took, if you're still in the process, go into a little bit more detail on the setup.
All right, I'll talk to you on both occasions. For Resilience One, Resilience One is not, I repeat, not a customized system. It's based on best practices the DRI and BCI have put out. It has customizable fields that if me as an organization can modify naming conventions to meet the way we operate here. It treats everything as, hey, this is the standard. It meets all regulatory requirements, and it's constantly updated. And guess what? The rollout was simple. We paid the bill. It was turned on. The instance was there. They trained in the operation. I've got a user's manual that's always online. I train my users and my call list members in where that tool is, and they can pull up everything, which cuts down on my training of their on time of them. But they also can give me a call if they run into a problem, if they need to. But rarely do I have an issue with Resilience One training. Everbridge is part of the crisis notification system of R1. And the way I'm training people is to utilize and go to R1 first. And all they have to do is build their call list or make sure their call list and users are up to date and send the message out. If they need, and they put in a request, additional access, which is to the advanced features of Everbridge, then I have to teach them those advanced features. When Everbridge taught me all of the features of the product from using it as a standalone product, it took a couple days, well, not days, but hours, but it essentially was over a multiple day period. And the user's guide that came with it, plus the guidance that was given over the phone by Carrie in Boston, was phenomenal. She took time to understand what I needed, Ironshore, and she addressed all the answers to my questions based upon what I needed, not as an added opportunity to sell me on how good the product was. We already knew how good the product was because of the leadership of Strategic BCP and Everbridge coming together to bring two leading Gartner groups together in one integrated tool. So the training was phenomenal. The products are intuitive and they're easy to use. If you forget how to do it, you can go right in and do it. And with R1, with Everbridge, it's not that difficult either. But as I told you guys earlier, that I'm not rolling full functionality out to a vast number of users. Could I? Yes. Do I? No.
Wonderful. Along the same lines, Pat, just more usage questions. We have some great questions coming in. Thank you to our audience members. Keep asking them. They're wonderful. So one of our audience members is wondering if you use the integration for any predefined critical events that might happen. So do you do any predefined templates that, if something was to happen, you could just send out an Everbridge communication notification right away?
Whoever asked that question must know how Resilience One operates, or they're thinking about this on their own. Either way, it's a great question. Resilience One comes with a number of preloaded events, whether they be natural or man-made, that have the potential to impact the organization. As Ironshore is global in nature, those events are customized by me and by the people operating in different countries or different cities to the type of environment in which they operate, whether it be Hong Kong or China or London or Germany, wherever it may be, that shows what the potential impacts are. The higher the impact based on the risk, then you have to have a specific plan based on that, like a hurricane, tornadoes, all of those things. Slow-moving disasters, we can and we are pre-placing event notifications within Resilience One, so that we can just send the notification out. We like to operate over here at the 95% rule that says we know 95% of those things that can and will go wrong. We do, based on experience. Not just our experience, but Everbridge's experience, Resilience One people over at Strategic BCP's experience. They built this into the tool that's always improving. And so we, over here at Ironshore, have developed our notification protocols based on those things that 95% we know are going to happen. Terrorist, we know it's going to happen. Don't know when, but we know it will. Power outages, other infrastructure outages, we know are going to happen. How are we going to notify? When are we going to notify? And who are we going to notify? Is all part of the call list structure that's being built into Resilience One with Everbridge as the back end, so that we don't have to think about what we're going to communicate. We already know what we're going to communicate. That allows management for that other 5% that we never planned on. That allows them to act on the fly and say, hey, I can handle 5%. I can't handle 100% of everything that goes wrong. And that's that knee-jerk reaction. We don't want that. We want everybody to be trained up front on how to handle the event based on that 95% rule. And that's how we do it.
Okay, excellent. Okay, we have you mentioned, Pat, you mentioned the HR data. I have one attendee wondering how many employees are at Ironshore, and are all of the employees' contact information, are they available in R1 and Everbridge?
996 currently. And that's just employees that are direct, either direct at full-time or full-time plus contract. Plus, I then have my critical vendors that are deemed critical based on the business impact analysis that we performed in R1. They are also part of my call lists that are in Resilience One that then feed the back end, which is Everbridge.
Excellent. Okay, so now our next question is for Nelson. Nelson, can you speak a little bit about the our customer maturity, the client base maturity, in terms of whether or not they seek a BCM automation tool first or an emergency notification tool first? What have you seen from our client base?
Well, that's a great question. I would say that, first of all, it depends on the client, but I have seen instances where the client already has a BCP tool and they're looking for a critical communications solution, or they have the communication solution, such as us. They have Everbridge, and they come to us and they say, "Hey, do you guys know anybody, or do you have any partners who can help us with business continuity planning?" Then you also have prospects in the market who don't have either and would like to start out day one with both solutions in place. So we've seen those organizations coming from any of those angles at this point. There's no, I would say right now, given what's happening in the world and what's been happening in the world for the last 2 years, the interest in all three of those, from each of those three angles is increasing almost on a regular basis.
Yeah, yeah. All right, thank you. Here's one question. Actually, we can kind of see, we'll start with Pat and see if you're currently doing this. Do you message people employees, staff members who are at different locations from, other than their listed HR database? For example, if someone's usually in a headquarters somewhere, but they're not in the office that day, is there a way to reach them that you're currently using right now?
Well, that's what we're moving towards, Megan, and whoever asked the question is improving our HR data so that we can just use that as our system of record. But the business managers, the people that have access into Resilience One as their planning tool, it's their ultimate responsibility to identify gaps in their communications capability, whether it be for Ironshore, whether it be a broker, whether it be an agent, whether it be a critical vendor that we didn't identify, or whether it's their full-time or contracted for person that doesn't currently reside in the HR database. So if they're bringing a temporary contractor in and they're deemed critical and they need to be notified, it's the responsibility of the person there to add that user into their system, or email me through change management and say, hey, Pat, need you to add this person into Resilience One and into Everbridge so we can contact them in the event of emergency. So to answer your question, yes, we do, but it's driven by the functional business units, because HR doesn't know everything. I don't know everything. IT doesn't know everything, but the lines of business do. And that's where the ultimate responsibility and accountability for maintaining Resilience One data and Everbridge data resides. And that's why we've got that in our policy and our standard.
Great. Actually, while I have you, Pat, I have another question about, because we've been talking a lot about critical events, you know, severe weather, disruptions in business. Do you use the tool for day-to-day operations? So, you know, is there any just like day-to-day operations that you're tracking in R1 and you need to notify people about with Everbridge?
That's what the project management tool in Resilience One allows us to do. We're starting to roll that out where we put reminders. They either have to do the BIA review, or they have to do a look at your business processes and make sure your functions are there, or hey, take a look at your call list to make sure they're updated. We're going to be utilizing Everbridge for that same purpose, because a lot of our people don't work in a traditional environment. They're working remote from their homes, or they're working remote at an alternate location that happens to be another insurance agent or an alternate location. Like we've got Ironshore people that are working in Liberty Mutual space, or we've got Liberty Mutual people that are working in Ironshore space. The reason is because, like I said, email through the corporate network is not 100%. And as Nelson said, multiple contact methodologies and responses to that methodology alleviates the thing. I didn't get that message. Well, guess what? You get voice, you know, SMS, text, you get email, you get all of these things. You respond, it's captured as a record. There's no more deniability. And that's what we need in business continuity. We don't want people to deny that they actually got the communication. No more passing the buck. Some people like that, some people don't. But from a business continuity standpoint, in a regulated environment, I happen to love that feature.
I don't blame you. Here is the last question for you, Pat. In terms of like predefined templates, how do you deal with multiple incident disasters? You know, there's a disaster zone somewhere, you know, in a county, but there's also a disaster zone somewhere else in a county. How do you account for multiple disaster zone incidents?
Well, before I was depending upon the local emergency management relationships that I had developed. I was dependent upon my people calling or emailing me, or I was, you know, like a lot of you, dependent upon CNN or some of these other news agencies. Well, as you know, the news agencies aren't always as accurate as they need to be, and people and their perceptions are not as accurate. With the integration of Everbridge, it allows me to look at multiple Everbridge users not just within my organization, but other groups that do the reporting. And I can look at those multiple impacts and the cascading effect, and I can analyze that for accuracy, ask the right questions of those groups using Everbridge, and then I can then make appropriate decisions, or I can request my executive management to make decisions based upon accurate information I give them. The tool allows me to do that. The integrated tool allows me to leverage and the approval of management for 95% of decisions up front, so I don't have to go ask permission to communicate or to ask questions of responding groups. That help?
Absolutely. Okay, we have time for a couple more questions. Nelson, here's a question for you. This is going back to the location data. Is there a way, we have this static HR data. Does Everbridge have the capability to allow to pull data that isn't static, so dynamic location data to use for notifications?
Yes, that's a great question, and I'm glad somebody asked that question, because that's a very important piece of information that a lot of organizations overlook. Today we look at where do you live and where do you work, or I should say in the past that's what people were most concerned about, but they never took into account where people could be or where they are going to be today, tomorrow. So for example, if you have people who are away from your office, where are they going to be? Are they traveling through airports? Are they traveling through areas where there's been current unrest or any kind of an issue, whether it's even political unrest or anything else? So yes, Everbridge does support the capabilities for you to submit through the system the information about where somebody was last known to be or where they're going to be, including integrations with, for example, badging systems. When I come into my Everbridge office in Pasadena, the Everbridge system knows, hey, Nelson just badged into Pasadena, so if anything happens in Pasadena, then they will send a message to everybody who is in that Pasadena location, who is expected to be in that Pasadena location, and anyone who is last known to be in that location. If Nelson then badges in the London office, then the system now knows where I am, and if any messages need to go in that to anybody in that location, then the Everbridge organization admin for that client organization can rest assured that when they send a message, and they include the static locations, dynamic locations, and expected locations, that they'll be able to send the message to me, and I will receive that message when I either arrive in London or because I am actually there now.
Perfect. Okay, one last question. Terry, this one is for you. We have somebody asking whether or not they'd have to sign into two different platforms. So if they'd have to be signed into Resilience One and Everbridge at the same time, or how it works with the integration.
Well, they're both web platforms, and then most organizations or customers integrate with their single sign-on system. So nobody actually logs into the Resilience One application in many of our implementations. It just happens naturally through single sign-on. Between the two tools, on the back end, our customer support organization sets up administrative rights so that the communications between the two tools are not only handled securely, but there's no login required once it's configured on the back end. It takes about 2 minutes to do it. It uses unique identifiers, and this is in coordination with the Everbridge customer support organization as well. It all happens over the phone, and as I said, it only takes a couple of minutes. From that point forward, the two tools are connected and communicating with each other.
Excellent. Okay, we have run out of time, unfortunately, and I do see that there were some questions that we weren't able to get to, so we will absolutely, either somebody from from Everbridge or somebody from Strategic BCP will follow up shortly. I'd like to thank you guys all for a great session. The presenters, you were wonderful, and to all of our attendees who were able to join us today. If you missed any part of the webinar, please look for an email with a link to the resources in the next coming days. If you have any questions, please reach out to any of the presenters from today's webinar. You can also go on either one of our websites and fill out a contact us form, but somebody should be reaching out to you from either company within a few days. And thank you so much for your participation in today's webinar, and we hope to see you at our next session. Have a great day.
Thank you, Megan.